The young girl sat gracefully at the table, pondering the possibility of waking up as a passing villainess in a novel. Well, it happened to her. There's a slim chance of becoming the villainess. Now, she finds herself entangled in a gripping novel, where survival becomes her utmost priority. She has vowed to steer clear of the main characters, particularly Ivan Lev Dillon, who was recently taken to the shelter just days before she assumed the identity of the villainess. Sienna, Viscount Robert, the overseer of the institution, holds the key to her quest, hidden away in the farthest corner of this prison-like asylum. Finally, she mustered the courage to approach the cage, her eyes fixated on the sign, realizing that her search had led her to the very person she sought. With a hushed plea, she implored her father to grant her ownership of the snow leopard. As he gazed at her intently, he rejects her request. He questioned her true desire for the snow leopard. Sienna explained that it's a snow leopard. Viscount Robert didn't understand what she meant. She informs him that it means pretty like snow. The snow leopard, displeased with the name, began to growl, but Sienna's smile remained unwavering as she assured him that she would tame him. This tale was not unfamiliar to her. The original Sienna viewed the beasts as mere playthings. Among them was Ivan, a prisoner who had suffered greatly at Sienna's hands. Ivan, the protagonist and sole heir to the Lion and Black Panther families, was burdened with a grave flaw. He was a mutant snow leopard, neither lion nor panther. From the moment of his birth, the Duke and Duchess, his parents, turned their backs on him, and others followed suit, casting disdainful glances his way. Ivan managed to escape the empire and sought refuge in a kingdom inhabited by humans, only to find himself confined within the walls of enprison, a place where prisoners were sold as slaves. Ivan endured countless humiliations, reduced to nothing more than a snow leopard by day's end. Until the Duke, his father, arrived to take him away. As the case unfolded, it became clear that Ivan had been abused, and with the illegal activities surrounding the prison and abuse, the family was destroyed. The abuse of power ultimately led to the tragic demise of Sienna's entire family. It was a devastating end for the young girl. When Sienna entered her new body and tried to adjust to her new reality, she constantly felt the presence of her father. However, she couldn't shake off the discomfort she felt around him. Sensing her unease, her father urged her to relax, but Sienna knew deep down that her life was in danger and she couldn't accept it. The servants began to notice Sienna's restlessness and suspected that her father was having a hard time. They even witnessed him crying in secret, completely unaware of what had happened to his daughter. Lately, Sienna had stopped calling him Dad. She started to wonder if there was anywhere she could escape to, but her memory loss prevented her from finding a solution. Lost in her thoughts, she was interrupted by a maid, who presented her with a basket of food, including homemade bread made with the finest ingredients. She also revealed that the Viscount had ordered a collection of dresses specifically for Sienna. Her father also gave her some pocket money. With these gestures, Sienna realized that it might be better for her to stay and live in this place, pretending to be the daughter of a wealthy nobleman. However, in order to do so, she had to fulfill the most important task of all, protecting the protagonist. However, Ivan, the protagonist, was already imprisoned. Sienna knew she had to rescue him in order to survive. She decided to approach her father and convince him to accompany her to the prison. Sienna had a well-thought-out plan to take Ivan from the orphanage, give him a nickname, and tame him to prevent any unfortunate outcomes. Unfortunately, Robert, her father, refused to let her bring a wild and dangerous snow leopard into their home. Despite his love for Sienna, he was reluctant to endanger her life. Sienna couldn't believe her father would say no to her, and she realized that her destiny might be unchangeable. Determined, Sienna spent a few days persuading Robert to reconsider. But when she finally opened her eyes, she saw a worried Robert and a concerned maid. Sienna suspected she had fainted due to her emotional distress. Robert, filled with tears, understood that her condition was a result of her desire to have the snow leopard. Even Sienna could see that her father had been crying all night. However, when she tried to speak, she felt a strange sensation in her throat, causing her great pain. The maid assumed Sienna was sick and urged her not to move. Despite this, Sienna's longing to have the snow leopard made her start talking again. Eventually, her father explained that the snow leopard was already with them, surprising Sienna. However, the maid quickly explained that they had taken the animal with them. Intrigued, Sienna insisted on seeing it, and her father and Rosa stepped aside to reveal the chained creature. The animal's gaze was filled with aggression and fear, but Sienna remained unfazed. She knew that this encounter would change her fate. Her father, Robert, tamed beasts through violence, torture, and cruelty. Sienna was surprised by the ruthlessness of people, but she had a greater goal in mind: to keep her father and Ivan as far apart as possible. With a smile, she asked her father for some rest. As he carefully observed his daughter, he agreed, realizing her beauty. Sienna noticed his reaction and wondered when he would finally leave. Robert mentioned that the leopard eyes were weird. At that moment the snow leopard growled. Robert noticed the leopard's aggression. He instinctively reached for his whip and approached it. Sienna screamed, desperately pleading with him to stop, but her father ignored her pleas. In a moment of bravery, Sienna rushed towards the snow leopard, shielding it from the Viscount's whip. The blow landed on her back, causing blood to trickle down, but she held onto the leopard, trembling in pain. Robert was stunned by his own actions, realizing what he had done to his daughter. With his legs trembling, Robert slowly made his way towards his daughter, but Sienna demanded that he never harm her pet again. Frightened, he immediately scooped her up in his arms and called for the maid to fetch a doctor. In her father's embrace, Sienna felt a wave of despair wash over her. It pained her to know that her father cherished his own children but lacked any compassion for others. Despite Ivan's aggressive nature and inability to understand Sienna's actions, she made a firm decision to protect him at all costs. Eventually, a doctor arrived and stitched up the wound on her back. As she gazed at the scar, Sienna thought about the immense pain Robert had intended to inflict upon Ivan. Sienna had no desire to tame Ivan in the same manner as the Viscount. She knew it would take time and patience, but she refused to rush the process. However, when she directed her attention towards Ivan, she couldn't comprehend her own actions as he distanced himself, seemingly burdened by guilt or offense. Suddenly, a knock at the door. Sienna's father requested permission to enter, but the girl's anger flared, denying him access. She realized that if it weren't for Robert, none of this would have transpired. Robert, perplexed by his daughter's lingering anger, continued to apologize and express his deep concern for her well-being. Sienna remained resolute, knowing she needed ample time to contemplate whether forgiveness was possible. Though her body still trembled from the pain she endured, Sienna fought to regain control. She had no regrets, for she had successfully shielded Ivan from harm. With newfound joy, she surveyed the snow leopard and explained to Ivan the importance of nourishment for his recovery. She understood that this young boy deserved greater things in life, and their relationship would gradually transform. However, in that moment, she noticed the wound he bore on his body, an injury that seemed to have been left untreated. It was unbelievable to her that the snow leopard had been neglected for so long, left without any care or attention. Sienna couldn't help but worry if Ivan had sustained his injury while staying at the orphanage. She carefully examined the leopard, trying to piece together how he had gotten hurt, and cautiously asked if she could approach him. However, Ivan was fast asleep, clearly in a bad state. Realizing that she needed to tend to him, Sienna got up from the bed. Despite feeling a bit apprehensive, she knew she had to feed and nurse him back to health. As she tried to touch him, he unexpectedly growled, which hurt Sienna's feelings, considering she had saved him from a severe beating. Sienna then noticed her own empty stomach and realized that Ivan must be hungry too. She inquired what he wanted to eat with a smug smile. Sienna was certain that Ivan hadn't eaten in days, so she knew he would refuse out of pride. Sienna smiled and explained that if he wasn't going to eat, she wouldn't either. It was a subtle manipulation, as she knew Ivan would understand. Sienna hoped that Ivan would grasp the fact that she was young, weak, and sick. Would he still not eat? She patiently waited for him to comprehend her manipulation and agree to eat with her, but to her disappointment, Ivan simply turned away. That's when Sienna stopped eating too. Initially, she attempted to feed Ivan, unsure of what he might like. She had approached the cooks and asked them to prepare a variety of dishes. Sienna placed the plates in front of him, hoping he would eat. When that didn't work, she moved on to plan number 2. She laid a blanket next to the snow leopard and explained that she would sleep beside him, but Ivan seemed perplexed. Determined, Sienna initiated plan number 3. She began complaining to Robert about the extent of pain and how much it was hurting. Eventually, after a few days, Ivan grew accustomed to the girl's presence. Though he still resisted her touch, he became more comfortable around her. Robert approached Sienna, handing her a plate of food. He asked if she wanted some soup, considering she hadn't eaten in a while. Sienna declined, knowing that Ivan had no appetite either. There was no use trying to convince him otherwise. However, to her surprise, Ivan woke up and gazed at her intently. Sienna believed that she and the snow leopard had found a way to communicate, but he suddenly walked away. Sienna couldn't fathom where he was headed, but then Ivan approached the food left for him and devoured it all. Sienna felt an overwhelming joy witnessing this, and she too began to eat, pleasing her father. Later, her father expressed concern about having wild animals near her. Sienna calmly asked if he wanted to bring him back to the shelter and if his existence is bad. Robert clarified that it was because the animal posed a danger, which is why she had to keep it under control. Sienna, however, assured him that she would take care of Ivan. The Viscount couldn't comprehend what the girl would do if the beast were to suddenly attack. Robert realized that he should not have allowed such a situation to arise. Robert regretted bringing the snow leopard there. He wouldn't have done it if he knew she would have gotten so close to it. He inquires if she must take care of it. She boldly states she'll take care of it. She gripped herself and told him not to whip Snow ever again, but he didn't understand her concerns. She informs him that the doctor stated the whip will leave a scare. He agreed to her terms and began crying. She was flabbergasted. She wanted to comfort him but stopped herself. Sienna, determined to change her father's harsh animal control methods, demanded that he promise not to harm Snow again. He agreed and apologized. After that day he never harmed Snow again. Sienna was relieved when he finally started eating. She approached him with a medicine box, but he grew angry and grilled. Sienna tried to understand what was happening. Realizing that Ivan's hunger might have been the reason for his sudden appetite earlier, she had thought he was worried about her. She urged him to continue eating, knowing that if he didn't, she would stop eating too. Ivan must have been aware of this, but then she noticed that Snow began to cover his ears with his paws, indicating that he didn't want to hear something like that. So, Sienna smiled and explained to Ivan that it wouldn't harm him, asking him to relax a bit. Then, she looked at the healing ointment in her hands and assured that one day, the time would come when Snow would allow her to use it. A few days later, while sitting on her bed, Sienna reflected on the fact that Ivan had his real name, but it felt strange to call him that since he didn't tell her. Sienna thought that calling the child his real name was a little odd. It was like calling a cat a cat. Sienna wanted to give Ivan a name before his father, the Duke of the Black Panthers, arrived. However, upon looking at Ivan's red eyes, Sienna decided to name him Ruby. Then, she approached Rosie and asked her if the snow leopard's eyes reminded her of those of the beautiful Ruby, closely examining Ruby's eyes. Awkwardly, Rosie confessed that Ruby's eyes actually looked like blood smeared on a piece of paper, but the girl convinced her that Rosa was mistaken. Sienna asked Ruby if she liked the name and warned her that if she didn't say anything, she would assume that she agreed with the name. In the end, Ruby didn't say anything and began to eat calmly, which made Sienna realize that she actually liked the name. In fact, Ivan liked it a lot. A few more days passed, and Sienna started to notice that Ruby had been a little lethargic lately, probably due to stress from being tied up for so long. As she approached him, Sienna began to think that it would be nice if Ruby could talk and tell her what was wrong. She pondered for a considerable amount of time about the causes of his lethargy, and Rosie noticed this. Rosie, curious, began questioning her, and she honestly admitted that she was concerned about the snow leopard's condition. She had previously believed that they were growing closer, but now it seemed that Ruby and her were drifting apart once again. Rosie disapproved of the girl's negative talk and urged Sienna not to do anything foolish. Sienna agreed, assuring her that she had no intentions of doing anything drastic. However, she turned around with a smile and revealed that she had an idea and needed to conduct some research. This surprised Rosie. Before Rosie could respond, Sienna calmly explained that she had never been fond of studying. Nevertheless, Sienna asked Rosie to forget about her previous self because she would never be the same again. Sienna also confessed that she genuinely wanted to learn more about Ruby, which further astonished the maid. The girl expressed her curiosity about Ruby's likes and how she could make Ruby feel better. Rosie advised her that if she truly desired to study, she should speak to her father and request an official teacher. Additionally, until she found a teacher, Rosie suggested that she visit the library and borrow books that interested her. Sienna agreed, realizing that if she didn't have a teacher yet, it would be worthwhile to spend her time at the library. Sienna contemplated the fact that snow leopards are mutants. There probably wasn't much or any information available about black panthers, so it would be beneficial to research and learn more about them. It would be great if the books provided details about the black panther's characteristics and favorite activities. Then, the girl could engage in activities that Ruby enjoyed the most and even bring her favorite food. However, upon leaving the room, the girl noticed a peculiar atmosphere as the other maids stared at her. Among them, one of the newer maids accidentally dropped her plate upon seeing Sienna and immediately fell to her knees, expressing her overwhelming apologies for her mistake. The girl's words were incomprehensible to Sienna, leaving her puzzled. As time passed, Sienna glanced at Rosie, who appeared completely calm and unsurprised by the situation. The kneeling maid began to cry, and Sienna couldn't shake off the feeling of familiarity with this peculiar scenario. Regardless of how many times she passed by, it became evident that the situation posed no danger. Despite Sienna's good intentions and deeds, people still became nervous merely by seeing her, labeling her as a villain. However, Sienna turned to the maid and genuinely asked if she was okay. The girl became so frightened that she sprouted ears and quickly turned away, transforming into a puppy. Observing the puppy, Sienna realized that the girl, Mori, had likely been a prisoner before Sienna's arrival. Sienna reassured her that she had no intention of causing harm. However, Mori, overwhelmed by fear, barked and she fainted from the intensity of her fear. Rosie explained that Mori's name was given to her when she lived in the prison, and they had brought her here. Sienna found it hard to believe that such a situation was possible, but Rosa reminded her that she had personally chosen Mori as her maid and brought her to this place. Sienna wondered why she was so afraid of her. Sienna's heart ached as she glanced at the adorable puppy, Mori. She couldn't fathom how the original version of herself could have ever mistreated such a gentle creature. It was as if she had transformed into a completely different person, someone who no longer possessed the capacity for cruelty. As she tucked Mori into bed and covered her with a cozy blanket, Sienna couldn't help but wonder why the original Sienna and her father had been so desperate to abuse innocent animals. It was a question that lingered in her mind, but she knew one thing for certain: violence was never the answer. Upon laying her eyes on it, Sienna immediately noticed Ruby's interest in the girl. With gentle care, she picked up the puppy and, leaning Mori towards Ivan, she allowed him to sniff the puppy for a moment. However, Mori's eyes widened in fear as she glanced at the snow leopard, causing her to faint once again. Sienna was perplexed and unsure of what to do. She had believed that the animals would get along, but it seemed she was mistaken. Sienna turned to Rosie and explained the situation, suggesting that they call a doctor. Rosie explained that Mori was still very young and struggling to overcome her wild instincts. However, she believed that if Sienna left her alone, Mori would eventually regain her senses. Nevertheless, Rosie agreed to call a doctor as a precautionary measure. Sienna thanked Rosie, feeling saddened by the turn of events. All she had wanted was to introduce Ivan and Mori, but she had made yet another mistake. From now on, she resolved to be more cautious. As Sienna left, Rosie realized that her mistress shouldn't easily give her heart to these beasts. When the doctor arrived, he examined the puppy and concluded that the girl had simply fainted out of fear, but she would soon recover. The doctor was impressed by Sienna's composure throughout the ordeal. Just as he was about to leave, Sienna stopped him and boldly asked if he himself was a mutant. The doctor was taken aback by her question, but he admitted that she was right. Sienna's curiosity got the better of her, and she began to inquire about how much the doctor truly knew about the mutant people. She wanted to learn everything she could about them. The boy pondered on what Sienna's intentions were. He assumed she wanted to delve into topics like joints, blood, and bone marrow. He couldn't imagine Sienna, known for her cruelty, having a genuine desire to learn. He believed she lacked the compassion to handle people like them, let alone engage in educational pursuits. She then inquired if Al had his own office, implying that she wanted to visit it immediately. Sienna's smile hinted at her determination. Al confirmed having an office and Sienna insisted they go there without delay. Sienna didn't mind because she believed learning from real beastmen would be more beneficial than seeking a teacher elsewhere. However, he appeared visibly frightened and tried to conceal his trembling hands behind his back. Al assured Sienna that everything was fine. Al's cat-like features, including his ears, nose, and whiskers, inadvertently revealed themselves. Sienna realized that even adults fear a devilish 8-year-old girl, which unsettled her. She couldn't fathom why a grown man would be so terrified by her mere presence. Nevertheless, she knew she had to calm him down. Sienna approached Al calmly and reassured him that she meant no harm and had no ill intentions. Unexpectedly, the girl extended her little finger as a gesture of promise. Al was surprised by this unexpected sign and noticed that Sienna had changed significantly since their last encounter. They shook their fingers, sealing their agreement that Al would attempt to teach Sienna what he knew. Just as Sienna was left alone, still caring for Maury, her puppy, her father entered the room, prompting her to quickly hide the adorable canine. As Robert entered, he locked eyes with Ivan. A battle of glances ensued. She couldn't comprehend her father's cruelty towards living beings. However, Robert proved to be a wonderful father, even though Sienna couldn't fully understand his actions. When Robert questioned if Sienna's would be eating in her room again, she nervously exclaimed yes. Sienna assured her father that she was content with everything and preferred to stay in her corner. Yet, Sienna turned to her father once more, explaining her desire to study veterinary pet care. She emphasized that understanding these creatures was crucial for better pet care. Although Robert struggled to accept this notion, he approached the snow leopard and realized Sienna's genuine affection for the animal. Sienna managed to calm her father's anger, assuring him that she still had much to learn about animals. However, Robert couldn't fathom why his daughter needed such knowledge. He even suggested using the whip to instill more cruelty in Ruby's upbringing. Yet, Sienna reminded him of their previous agreement, hoping he would remember the promise he had made. Robert gazed at his daughter, embracing her tightly as he exclaimed that she had become soft-hearted. Sienna couldn't help but feel that what he said didn't make sense. She had tortured many animals, so it's hard to believe she would be considered soft-hearted. Nevertheless, Robert agreed to support her endeavors.